guest for the month of April. So, we're live.
Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, Coach Steve. We got the whole crew with us today, guys, as we break down part 2 of free agency today. A lot more to talk about, discuss, dynasty, redraft, all of it together. We're going to have the impact talk about it today. So let me introduce the crew as always. Coach Gibbs, what's going on, brother?
Howdy, dog. Ain't much, brother.
Love it. You're back in the universe, I see again. Love to see that. Coach Sean, you're back in the closet. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, I got relegated back to the closet. Everything's good. Can't complain. Just another beautiful day. Get to talk football with my friends. So I'm super excited.
Love to hear that. Love to hear that. Of course, today, guys, I am no longer in the office. I am in the background of Mitch Trubisky and a Bears uniform for some reason. But it's going to be fun anyway. So like I said, guys, we are going to go through part 2 of free agency today. If you caught our part 1, that was last week's show. We went through so many players, I felt like, in an hour span. And today we have very other people that we might have not talked about. It's been maybe 2 weeks now, but we're going to get to them now and kind of break that all down. So let's get into the stream today. Let's see what this looks like. I don't hate that. So that's kind of cool. All right. So let's start at the top here. We're going to start with these minor trades. They're not anything too crazy, but I'm going to go through the motions here on these guys. Joshua Dobbs signed a 1-year deal with the Cleveland Browns to be Deshaun Watson's backup. He started a few games last year. He's been kind of a journeyman. Brandon Powell, dual threat player, signed a 1-year deal with the Vikings. Had 17 carries last year on his 5th team now. Ty Johnson had re-signed up with the New York Jets. We've seen him at times be decent. He had that one season over 400 all-purpose yards. Jamison Crowder, back from the dead, signs with the New York Giants. He hasn't really been relevant since 2019. Disappointing the last 3 years. Tony Jones, the alpha mentioned, always pick him up in redraft waiver wires and does absolutely nothing. Has a 2.7 yards per carry average in his career. Nelson Aguilar signs a 1-year deal with the Baltimore Ravens. Pretty down year his last 2 years in New England after getting that decent contract. Marquez Callaway signed with the Denver Broncos, a familiar face for Sean Payton. He had 700 yards in 2021 and 6 touchdowns, but very, very disappointing in 2022. I didn't put this one in here, but Marquise Goodwin signed with the Cleveland Browns. Pretty good 3-4 wide receiver, 33 years old, decent at times last year at Seattle. Steve Sims, I didn't put that in there, of course, either. I'm clearly not on the right page. Slot receiver, 4-year pro. Interesting rookie season, has kind of fallen apart since then. Really nothing, but he did sign a 1-year deal with the Houston Texans. And then Brandon Edwards today signed a 1-year deal with the New Orleans Saints to kind of repair back up with Derek Carr, who had a decent 1 year with him a long time ago, but he has been ever since just trying to find himself a niche in the NFL. Anything here, guys, you find interesting?
The only one maybe is taking a stab at Brian Edwards, but that's like the only one that like maybe I could see, but the rest are all kind of depth pieces and camp bodies in my mind. I don't see a ton of fantasy value to be had.
Nah. This list again.
Did pretty easy. Yeah, nothing really here at all that really stands out for either redraft or dynasty. These are borderline bench players at best, and that's at best. And then obviously none of these players are worth drafting in redraft, obviously this coming year, unless something major happens. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Again, these were the minor signings. So let's get into this. Most of these signings here happened in about the first week of free agency here that we didn't get a chance to get through, but we're going to go through here, and I'm actually going to combine a couple of them at some point here. I'm going to start with the Jets. The Jets obviously signed Allen Lazard to a 4-year, $44 million deal to persuade Aaron Rodgers to want to come there. He had a career high last year, 788 yards, 100 targets, 60 receptions, 14 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. And also, Mecole Hardman recently signed a 1-year deal, former second-round pick who just never really seemed to get it going to what I think everyone expected him to do when being drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. Signed a 1-year deal there now. So yeah, the Jets have Allen Lazard and Mecole Hardman. What do you guys feel? How do you guys feel about these wide receivers, and can they live up to wide receiver 3 value, or you can't trust it?
I mean, a lot has to do with Aaron Rodgers. A lot has to do with who the quarterback is. So, news hasn't broken yet. It's like, I don't know. There's new reports that like they're not even interested in Lamar Jackson. Like the Jets are really all in on Aaron Rodgers, and it's like I don't know what's taking so long. But assuming Aaron Rodgers is there, and assuming everything is gets done and dusted, I love the wide receiver core. I think it's probably one of the better wide receiver cores in the league. I mean, if you have Allen Lazard, Garrett Wilson, Mecole Hardman, and then Corey Davis as your 4, it's like that's a pretty good core. You can get a lot done. The problem is Garrett Wilson is going to be your alpha. I mean, he's going to be your 120, 140 target guy. And then you have to kind of split up the rest with, some deep balls and some touchdown shots. So I would rather take those with Mecole Hardman just because of the speed than I would with an Allen Lazard. But they're both going to kind of be that, big splash wide receiver 3s. They might have a big play or a big game. But for fantasy, there's going to be volatility with those guys after Garrett Wilson. But I think there's value to be had for sure.
I don't know. Like I probably would, out of the two, lean with Lazard because he'll obviously know if Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback, he'll know like the offensive philosophy and their scheme and the wording and everything like that. Meanwhile, Mecole Hardman probably have to learn the situation, being in a new situation. So like I do see John's point being with the explosive capabilities of him, and I've been like a long fan of him, but like obviously he hasn't done much with Patrick Mahomes. I can't expect him to be like the second coming with Aaron Rodgers at age 40. So I'll keep with the system and Allen Lazard, but like I don't think you should go out of your way and like get these guys like in a dynasty perspective, unless like someone's just throwing Mecole Hardman for scraps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you guys said it pretty well. I mean, obviously, if there's no Aaron Rodgers, which there's going to be at some point, it might take another month or two, but there's definitely going to be an Aaron Rodgers in New York more than likely. But if it wasn't, wouldn't want to touch either one of these guys to that extent. But I think Allen Lazard is definitely someone I really will trust as a low-end wide receiver 3. Once Rodgers is there, it's something that you just have that trust built in already. I mean, we're going into the same situation as we did this past season with, he doesn't trust young players and doesn't have that. When he doesn't have trust to a wide receiver, it takes time to kind of build that. And you saw that with Christian Watson last year where they had to build that to get up. Allen Lazard, he's not going to be great, but he's always going to be a consistent low floor guy that will get you those 8 or 9 fantasy points most weeks as a flexible option. So I do like Allen Lazard there. It's a good signing for him. He got paid. Again, he's not someone who has upside at all. Kind of gone from that. And Mecole Hardman, unless he's MVS with more speed and younger, I just don't really see any real situation where he comes a consistent fantasy option. So it's not really in the cards for Mecole Hardman for me personally. Yeah, it's great that they got a weapon like that, but unless they use him the right way, John said it best. It's the same thing as he was in Kansas City. He never got that experience, and he had Pat Mahomes. So it is what it is with both these guys. But yeah, it's decent signings for both. Obviously, the Jets to get those kind of players like that. All right, over to a quarterback. Baker Mayfield signed a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to be their starting quarterback in 2023. How do you guys feel about Baker in Tampa Bay?
Oh, man, I think 1 year, $4 million. That's a great signing for the Bucs. It's a good, sort of prove it deal for Baker Mayfield. I think Baker is good enough to run an offense. I'm not interested in Baker Mayfield specifically for fantasy, but I'm more interested in Bucs players now that it's Baker Mayfield versus Kyle Trask. Like, you know what I'm saying? So like, I guess it kind of helps your Chris Godwins. It helps your Mike Evanses. It helps, White, whoever their running back's going to be. And so all of that, I think the offense will just be a more sustainable offense. But that being said, they just had the greatest quarterback of all time and weren't really very fantasy viable. So It's tough. I think it's better than Kyle Trask, but I don't know. The Bucs are in a weird spot too, where you could see them trade Chris Godwin and Mike Evans mid-season. So I don't know. I think it's a good signing, a good football signing. I think it's smart for the Buccaneers. I think it's smart for Baker Mayfield, but for fantasy, it like doesn't super move the needle any one way for me. It's better than Kyle Trask. That's all I can say.
I agree wholeheartedly. He did have like that 2-3 game stretch at the end of the year for the Rams. Got his audition, $4 million. So he's going to be a 1-year wonder for your super flex leagues. I feel like that. And like John said, like the tank could be at any time, whether it's trading their star players or they have a poor record. So I could see him being the quarterback hunting in next year's draft. So good for Baker Mayfield. Congratulations. Hopefully you perform well to get a multi-year deal.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely a prove-it kind of deal for them because obviously if they get a quarterback for the cheap right now for this season and the team that they have, Baker can do enough to get them to at least maybe to the playoffs or the division winner because obviously that NFC South is really bad. It's like an audition for the year. He might not even win the starting job. He might. We'll see. But if he obviously does, it obviously gives you some, high-end QB3 numbers. I don't really see Baker being that because there's so many good quarterbacks. I can't see like a high-end upside QB2 even if he does play good. He doesn't have the really running floor that I really like in a player. And yes, he has weapons around him, but Baker's just shown us he's not a guy who can consistently throw big touchdowns up, and I just don't see it happening all of a sudden now in his career here. Again, he could end up being benched. If he plays a couple bad games, the team might just go to Kyle Trask if that's the case and see, all right, we'll see what Trash has. Let's see what he has in the tank instead of going after Baker Mayfield. So, it's a, make it break it kind of contract for Baker Mayfield. Don't really like it that much. I mean, I just don't really see him doing that well long-term for the Bucs. I don't see him being with the Bucs long-term. But in fantasy, I'd probably stay away still. I really wouldn't want to go after a guy like Baker.
Yeah, and to your point, the sentiment kind of going around Superflex Dynasty community is like, oh, this is a new lease on life for Baker Mayfield. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but he could be gone in, like you said, mid-season. If the Bucs stink and Baker Mayfield's 4 touchdowns and 13 interceptions, it's like, yeah, okay, well, maybe we will go to Kyle Trask. And for $4 million, they're not really tied to Baker. It's like, it's, this is a big risk, a big experiment, but he was a number 1 overall pick at one point. So for $4 million, it's worth taking that risk. But this is in no way, shape, or form like this crazy like revival of Baker Mayfield's career because the Bucs signed him. It's like they were super desperate. They needed anybody. They $4 million for Baker Mayfield seems like a steal after you just lost Tom Brady.
Watch like week 8, they're gonna cut Baker, pick up Carson Wentz off the couch, keep the season alive. You can't make the playoffs, dog. It's impossible for you.
They'll call Josh Rosen out of retirement. Be like, hey, listen, I know it didn't work out well for you, but we got a chance.
I mean, we've just seen it over the years. I mean, it's been like one exception, like Ryan Tannehill, a former first-round pick, going to another team and actually performing for fantasy. We've seen guys like Sam Darnold, Jameis Winston, Carson Wentz over the years now, just former first-round picks that just haven't been able to do it after leaving their original team. And I just don't see Baker being Baker being in that same model. So, yeah. All right, next up, D'Onta Foreman ran for 900 yards last year, signed a 1-year deal, up to $2 million deal with the Chicago Bears to pair him up with Khalil Herbert. How do you like D'Onta Foreman in Chicago?
I like the pairing. I think, D'Onta Foreman is a great, he's a great story. He was a kind of a big power back, strong, had that long speed that you always kind of look for. Tore his Achilles. Everyone thought he was done, thought, poor guy. He was a good prospect. And, now he's out. And, 3-4 years later, he's having a little revival to his career. So 1 year, $2 million with Chicago. I think he's basically a little bit lesser of a David Montgomery, but he will pair well with Khalil Herbert. He will be the Thunder. Khalil Herbert will be the Lightning. So, he could get some goal line opportunities with Chicago. Problem is you got Justin Fields, who might kind of siphon some of those away. But the offense should be better. They just added DJ Moore. They have the number 9 overall pick. I mean, the Bears could turn things around pretty quick. And if D'Onta Foreman finds himself in that goal line and goal to go short yardage situation, D'Onta Foreman could be, not saying this will happen because it's an outlier of a season, but if he all of a sudden starts off hot with a bunch of touchdowns and he has this weird like Jamal Williams kind of season, it's like it could happen. It could easily happen. He could easily be that guy. So I'm very interested in D'Onta Foreman in Dynasty because you could throw cheap picks at him and maybe get him, and then redraft he's going to be left for dead probably because no one wants him because he's an air quotes injury prone guy. But when he was going and he was cooking in Carolina, I mean, he was ripping off 100-yard games, no problem. He's just, that's who he is. He's 2-yard run, 2-yard run, 6-yard run, 40-yard run. And then it's like 2-yard run, 4-yard run, 2-yard run, 66-yard run. It's like, okay, this is every once in a while, he's just going to hit a big one. And so that's fun to have on your fantasy team.
Yeah. I can't even say any more. I think in redraft league he could be like. I think he's going to be the handcuff to Herbert, so like he'll be a good handcuff that way. And Jesus, like I still don't think they brought him over there for nothing, so I think he'll be usable in a sense. Like I don't know like how large his role will be, but hopefully they could give him 10 carries, like 8 to 10 touches. I wouldn't say carries, but yeah, it's looking good for the Bears. Nice cheap up that running back.
They're going to run the ball, that's for sure. And Foreman didn't have, obviously, he's not going to have, I think, the same kind of expectation that we liked in the second half of the last season when he was with the Panthers and him being like a low end RB2 kind of person, high end RB3. I think he's going to be a really strong backup to have. Khalil Herbert has, I think, gotten hurt the last 2 seasons off the top of my head. I can't remember. I had to look that up. But maybe he can't handle a 16-game season. Well, D'Onta Foreman can come in and just drive the ball like all day long. And it definitely hurts Khalil Herbert's value for me slightly on that. I really was liking what he was going to do potentially, but obviously I think this is a solid safety play that D'Onta Foreman going there isn't going to, I think, ruffle any feathers because it's only a 1-year deal. They're probably going to give Khalil Herbert the main carry of the ball because he does have 2 years left on his contract. And I don't expect him to really bring in a running back now in this draft, which actually I think makes Herbert's value okay at this point. But for Foreman himself, I think you're asking for a depth piece kind of bench guy, someone like what Samaje Perine kind of was last year to a lesser extent. And if obviously something happened to Herbert, Foreman has that upside. Good for a contending team. I'd probably want to sell off if I wasn't contending and get as much value as I can for him now as a 3rd-round pick and see what happens there because he is older already. Don't know how long he's going to have opportunities to actually start the rest of his career. So, all right. Over to the next signing here. Mike Gesicki, former Miami Dolphins, signs a 1-year deal worth up to $4.5 million with Coach John's New England Patriots. How do we feel about Mike Gesicki now in New England?
I think it's fine. I think they, they do like to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. They do like athletic pass catching tight ends. It's just kind of how their offense operates. Mike Gesicki fits that mold. He's a good inline tight end, could break a seam. They need weapons. They need pass catchers. I mean, everything makes sense. So again, 1 year, $4.5 million, fine. It's a good contract. It's decent. My only fear is I hope Patriots and Patriots fans don't look at this and start to like rest on their laurels and be like, oh, okay, well, we got a pass catching tight end. Like, the offense will figure itself out. It's like, no, you need a whole core of wide receiver. Like you have a bunch of wide receiver 3s. Like we need some alphas, some dogs out there to play. It's like, we just don't have it. So, Mike Gesicki, good signing, good depth piece. He'll, be fine. He might be 600 to 700 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns. He'll be fine, but he's not gonna break the bank or open up into some superstar player all of a sudden.
Very upset about this.
We still have Hunter Henry.
And Hunter Henry's still there. Yeah, yes. I mean,
good. Not a bad signing. He should have went to the Bengals. Would have got paid next year.
That would have been an interesting
That would
That
have
would have
been
been a
better.
big signing. That one I would have been like, oh, okay, now I'm paying attention because I mean we saw the tight end in that system. It was whether it was Uzama or whoever. Joe Burrow he likes that tight end in the red zone, so that would have been fun. But he's in New England, and Mac Jones has a noodle arm, so we got
That's
that.
unfortunate.
It's
maybe
too bad.
maybe Lamar Jackson will go there. That would be pretty interesting.
Maybe.
That would be fun. But yeah, I think with Mike Gesicki, I mean, you're not going to have the value what we were expecting over the last few years that we've had at Mike Gesicki, because he's going to split time with Hunter Henry. They're probably going to bring in more pass catchers via the draft, more than likely. So I just don't see him being the main guy there. I think Hunter Henry is a really good receiving tight end as well in his ability. Mike Gesicki is probably going to be the big slot guy more times than not. I mean, Juju's also there, so that I think they're going to find ways to use multiple slot receivers kind of in that sense, or slot pass catchers. And I can't even see him he's not even a top 12 dynasty quarterback, a tight end. And I don't even see him as a top 15 tight end in redraft this year. I just don't see the value where he ends up with 700 yards in a season, 300 or 400 maybe. And it also comes on the reliability of Mac Jones' arm and obviously how they like to run the ball with Ramondre Stevenson. So unless like people get hurt and Mike Gesicki just finds his way into a big target share, it just doesn't really make sense what they're doing with bringing in Mike Gesicki to the team.
Yeah.
So, all right, over to the next player. We have Gardner Minshew. Stash signs a 1-year deal worth up to $3.5 million with the the Indianapolis Colts.
I kind of wish New England signed him. That would have been cool.
That would be cool. That would be very cool. But how do you guys feel about Minshew Mania now in Indianapolis?
Good. It's funny. I think Gardner Minshew, it's funny because if you look at it, Gardner Minshew and Baker Mayfield both kind of signed these like similar deals, 1 year, 3.5, $4 million, kind of in that neighborhood. Baker Mayfield has the draft capital and the name behind him, but is he really that much different than Gardner Minshew? It's like, no, it's kind of the same guy. So it makes sense. Like, yeah, he's going to go in, he's going to compete for the starting job. He might win it, but worst case, we have a really high-end backup. So I think the situation is probably a little bit better for Baker Mayfield, but Gardner and Baker are the same guy, in my opinion. So yeah, 1 year, $3.5 million with the Colts. He's going to go in, he's going to try and compete for that starting job. He's got Jonathan Taylor, he's got some weapons around him. So if he wins, like you said with Baker, you could have kind of a 1-year wonder for fantasy, for Superflex, but it's going to be hyper volatile. He could lose his job the same way Baker could lose his job. So I wouldn't invest too much in any sort of, dynasty Superflex leagues, but, if you can throw a late pick and add him because you're kind of hurting at quarterback for a season, it might help Band-Aid things. And then redraft, again, I never really care for quarterback 16 to 20. Like those guys don't win you games. They don't move the needle. So Gardner Minshew will probably be a solid quarterback too, but like in redraft format, I'm like, all right, whatever.
I think it was a good move on his part. And I guess the Eagles coach, the Eagles offensive coordinator went there, so they're the new head coach, and he'll know some of the offensive scheme, and he'll have like a good feeling with the coaching staff. So, and if you think the Colts are getting a rookie quarterback in the draft, like they'll be sure as hell to throw him in there week 1. I think they will want to wait and let him learn the NFL and get the offensive right in the playbook. But at the end of the day, for redraft, you don't want him on your team. Dynasty, he's going to be that guy that's going to be floating in like the next man up in the QB world. So like you shouldn't like go after him, but like honestly, I think it's a good fit for him in the Colts though, because he could have like a good shot of playing and getting playing time because that's what he wants. He wants to be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, he's definitely a good depth quarterback in Dynasty to own. Obviously, he's had moments. He saw it last year. He had a really good fantasy outing, and he knows the offense. I mean, he's not going to be someone who's going to be long-term, obviously, in Indy, unless he wants to be the backup there. I think Minshew deserves still an opportunity to start somewhere else, a personal opinion. He doesn't have as many weapons, but, I mean, in Dynasty, if you're looking for a quarterback right now, he's a good guy that I could probably see playing the first 3 or 4 games of the season, depending on who they pick up at quarterback in the draft, if they do draft somebody. So, again, it's a good signing for for the Colts. Hopefully, Minshew gets opportunity to start at some point.
I will warn every Dynasty player out there right now who's thinking about adding Gardner Minshew to your team. At 4, the Colts will take a quarterback. So don't be surprised when that happens. And don't be worried because you're buying Gardner Minshew with the assumption that he's going to win the job over a rookie. That's how you should approach this, because it is borderline inevitable that at 4, they're probably going to get CJ Stroud. So, just be ready for that.
He's just, in general, he's just a good player to have in your Dynasty team, especially if you play Superflex, because you need these like backup guys who look at them as like, can Gardner Minshew be a guy who could start again in this league? Absolutely. You would want that kind of player on your bench. God forbid you need it in any given season. And this is a season just like this. If you've held him on for the last few years, he's getting a potential opportunity to start again. May not come. Who knows? We'll see. But the potential is still there, which is what you like at a guy like Minshew for fantasy. So, all right, next up, Adam Thielen signed a 3-year deal at 33 years old for $25 million with the Carolina Panthers. How do you guys feel about Adam Thielen?
Player coach.
You say player coach?
Because he thinks the Panthers can win a Super Bowl. What is his value, guys?
I would trade him for just about anything at this point in Dynasty. I would really, because again, this is the situation that you're gonna have. It's nice. Like, I'm happy for Adam Thielen. I'm psyched that he got paid. I love when players get paid. It's my favorite thing. But you're gonna understand, he's gonna have a rookie quarterback, so that's gonna be at least a year of just like learning growth of the NFL, all that. So maybe by year 2, you hope you hit on the quarterback. You hope he evolves into a great passer, and you hope by year 2, in Adam Thielen's year 35, of his life, that maybe he gets to 800 yards and 7 or 8 touchdowns. So it's like, okay. And then year 3, he's going to be cut and who knows what he's going to happen. So in my opinion, this is great for Adam Thielen. Psyched, probably a good locker room guy. Like Jib said, he'll help coach up some of these young guys, super young team. He'll teach them how to be professionals, but Adam Thielen is not going into the Panthers and going to be a 1,000+ yard receiver and 10 touchdowns. It's just not going to happen. So, the same way, I guess the same way you're kind of looking at Michael Thomas this year is kind of the same sort of breath you should be looking at like an Adam Thielen. Like, there's a lot of veterans that are going to be serviceable, steady veterans on a team, but it's like, I don't know, those guys don't win you fantasy. They just don't. Like, it's like, yeah, he's fine. He'll be steady, be good for the locker room, good for the team, make 4 or 5 catches a week, maybe. It's like, okay, that's great, but I'm not going out of my way to get that. And again, if he was 26, you're like, all right, well, eventually, the rookie quarterback will figure it out. But by the time that timeline happens, Adam Thielen will probably be out of the league. So I think it was just, I think they're just spending money to spend money. I don't know. It's weird.
They're trying to match the Houston Texans, but if I have him on a dynasty roster, you definitely have to sell him. The sunset is on the horizon for him. Like, sure, he's gonna have a good opportunity. I think he's kind of interesting late round pick. He'll be a late round pick in redraft leagues. You'll have like I wouldn't call it a wide receiver 3, but you have some guy who's going to be a predominantly leading receiver on the team, but with the rookie quarterback. So you just got to pray they make the right decision and the rookie quarterback can handle the NFL. But other than that, like, he's a gamble, but like you could also take a gamble with a rookie in the redraft leagues, and they could have upside later on in the season, while Thielen could have downside because of the situation, injury, or whatsoever, just poor play. So that's my perspective on Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I good for Adam Thielen to get paid. That's a great thing for him, but it's definitely a terrible move for fantasy. I just don't see a situation where, like John said, 1,000 yards. I just don't see it. He's had 7 under 800 yards 3 of the last 4 seasons here now. He was a big touchdown guy, and this new coaching staff, Frank Wright, I mean, honestly, he just really hasn't had a lot of, in his time in Indy, just really hasn't he didn't have a lot of 1,000-yard wide receivers. And he had Michael Pittman, he had T.Y. Hilton over the last 5 years. it was the run game which came big, and they obviously spent big on the run game getting Miles Sanders, and obviously they're probably going to get themselves somewhat of a mobile quarterback maybe. And DJ Shark just signed there. I just don't see where Adam Thielen ends up as a high anywhere in wide receiver 3 range consistently. He might have a few games where he pops, but it, like John said, I'm looking to sell off on this situation as much as I can. If I can get a couple thirds back from it, I'm great. I'll like it, especially in this draft. I love that. Just get Adam Thielen off your team. He's not worth being there. I just don't see him having upside in his age at this point. You just saw in the film last year, he just looked slow.
He's an old man. Yeah.
He's an old man, 33.
It
happens.
It happens. I feel you, Adam. I get you. I played golf 3 times this weekend. I'm exhausted. I can't imagine being an NFL. 3 times. I can't imagine being an NFL player.
Me and Jibs only played once.
Only once.
All right, on to the next one. These signings kind of happened after our show last Monday. A couple of these actually happened during the show. Dalton Schultz signed a 1-year deal up to $9 million with the Houston Texans. How do you guys feel about Dalton Schultz in Houston? God.
We talked about this the other day. Houston basically has to spend money at this point. They're so below the salary cap that it doesn't happen often, but you almost like the NFL can punish you for not spending enough money. So that's kind of the situation they're in, where they're like, all right, we got to. So signing guys like a Dalton Schultz is a good way, and because he's a solid tight end, he's a good pass catcher, he does everything really well. And again, you could have Mike Gesicki for $4 million or Dalton Schultz for $9 million. It's like I guess rather Schultz for $9 million because he's a more well-rounded player. And again, you're paying the same thing for Christian Kirk in Jacksonville last year. You kind of have to pay this like bad team tax where it's like, I got to overpay you a little bit to come play for me. I think that's kind of what the Texans are doing right now, which sucks, but it's just where the franchise is at.
Hey, they're pitching it. We'll give you some money. Like, look at our signings so far. We're not done yet. Like, we got the first pick or second pick, but yeah, it's peculiar. Like, I don't think he's going to be as good as he was with the Dallas Cowboys and their offensive philosophy. So they have a lot of people there. He should be the number 1 tight end there. And we've seen the Houston Texans, as bad as they have been, like have some weird tight ends be scoring some touchdowns. So Dalton Schultz is definitely better than all those non-name brand tight ends. So I think he'll have some kind of value, but I don't see him being like a guy who's going to be like a top 5 tight end in redraft. Like he should be like, hopefully like one of those late round ones that you could kind of target, and hopefully you have like the upside that pans out that you typically see some random tight ends doesn't redraft year after year after year.
Yeah, if he falls in that where Cole Kmet was kind of going last year, if he falls in like that range, I think it was like 9, 10, kind of that range. I'll be interested in Dalton Schultz for sure. I'm just afraid that people will be like, oh, he was on the Cowboys last year. He did this, he did that. And then, he'll be by the time we go draft, he'll be a 5th round pick. And it's like, well, I don't want him for that price. Like that's a little rich for Dalton Schultz. Mm-hmm. That's my only fear. But yeah, if he's going off the board as tight end number 9, I'm like, yeah, I'm totally in.
Yeah. Dalton Schultz is going off the board at round 5. I ain't getting a tight end until then.
I'll go for Mike Gesicki in round 16.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. It definitely doesn't bode well for his dynasty value that he could only get a 1-year deal out there. I mean, I feel like he been pretty decent the last few years. Maybe it was due to the high volume passing that made him better than maybe he seems to be. I mean, I'd be looking to sell off Dalton Schultz if he starts playing well in the season. I just don't know if he's going to get another big. If he's going to get a big contract in his career at this point, and I think he's already like 26, 27. He should be good. I mean, Houston uses their tight ends at times. We've seen it with Jordan Akins over the years. He just kind of comes out of nowhere and gets touchdowns. They're going to have a rookie quarterback, which, hopefully that bodes well for him kind of over the middle of the field. And his value long-term, it's kind of cloudy, but for this year, he should be someone who's a borderline tight end 1, more than likely, kind of definitely dipped down from his previous years. Again, good signing for Houston to get a guy who has that kind of power to his name. So All right. Houston also, in that same outing, within a few hours of each other, signed Devin Singletary to a 1-year deal worth up to $3.7 million deal. How do you guys feel about Devin Singletary, and how does this affect, can't think of his name, Damian Pierce?
Damian Pierce. Yeah. This is twofold sort of conversation in my mind. One is draft capital for running backs. It matters. It really does. I don't care what people will tell you. It matters. And so, the Texans weren't tied to, Damian Pierce because he was a 3rd, 4th round pick, day 3 guy. He served a purpose. He did enough, but they're like, look, we understand that he's not a 350 touch guy. We have to bring in other people to sort of complement him and do things that he can't do well. And Devin Singletary to me is that guy. He moves in space well. He, can kind of catch a ball on the flat and do things well. A little shifty kind of in between the tackles. And then you have Damian Pierce, who's a little bit more powerful, a little bit more of that old school, just jam it down your throat kind of running back. And so they have a nice little tandem, little 1-2 punch. I think it's going to affect both of them, which sucks. And again, they're on the Texans, which won't be a spectacular offense. So there won't be a ton of touchdown scoring. I think it's a good football signing, but stinks for fantasy where it's now, tough, where you're going to have Devin Singletary and Damian Pierce are going to be this, I don't know, kind of these like middling RB3s. And it's like they're just going to kind of eat into each other's work.
Well, that's the future of the NFL, like backfield tandems. And it's crazy. I don't know where these NFL are spending their salary cap on. Like the Texans have a running back crew that probably makes like $5 million collectively. Mm-hmm. And then you have these running backs who have problems getting $10 million contracts. So it's a power scheme, but I think it's a good fit for him on the Texans. And I don't think their fantasy value is going to be crazy whatsoever in the upcoming year. And I don't think you should pander to buy him in the dynasty format. If you have him, probably hold on to him, see if he kind of performs and becomes the alpha or becomes the 1A in the system. But it's just going to be one of those eyesores in fantasy world. So one of the two are going to emerge, and Devin Singletary is probably going to be one of the forgotten ones in redraft leagues that you could stash on the end of your bench and see what happens.
Yeah, it'd definitely be a good time to go as a contender to acquire a guy like Devin Singletary because of his value. He's obviously not a steady RB3 anymore now. We actually don't know what their roles are going to be. I mean, we saw Damian Pierce, see that big workload, and people like him for that reason. But obviously started breaking down towards the end of the season. And now you have Devin Singletary, who is a major upgrade over a guy like Rex Beckhead or Dar Oladipo. And it's just, you have a guy who was a trusted factor in Buffalo, who showed at times can produce high-end RB2 numbers. Mm-hmm. And now you're pairing him with Damian Pierce, who seems to be better at a split workload than having him have the full workload. It'd be interesting to see how they split this up. Again, it's just a 1-year deal, so it's nothing crazy, and I don't know his long-term value is any good, but it should be somewhat of a split backfield this season. And if obviously one of them gets hurt, obviously one of them jumps up to that high-end RB2 numbers. But it's good for Texans to get a guy I think can bring that more veteran presence to the team, especially in their running back core, and could probably help Damian Pierce in that sense. So I like the deal for Houston, but definitely doesn't help neither Pierce's or Singletary's value. So. Mm-hmm. All right, over to Damien Harris, who a couple hours after that signed a 1-year deal with the Buffalo Bills to be the new Devin Singletary. So how do we feel about Damien Harris in Buffalo?
So as the James Cook truther and the guy who loves James Cook, have him in a bunch of dynasty. This to me is actually an okay signing. I don't mind this one. Damien Harris is good, solid running back. Not great enough to be a 3-down guy. So obviously James Cook will still be in this mix, in this rotation. But Damien Harris is a good, Jib said it. A lot of teams are going to this like 2-3 back rotation. That's just how it is. It's rare that you have a Derrick Henry who gets 350 touches. It just doesn't exist. So it makes sense. Damian Harris complements James Cook really well. It's like James Cook is jittery, electric, big play, can catch the ball, and Damian Harris is just going to pound it down your throat. The good thing about this is they're in a great offense that'll have a lot of scoring opportunity. So, again, if Damian Harris finds himself in this goal line opportunity kind of situation and short yardage situation, and the Bills are putting up a ton of points, it's like, yeah, Damian Harris could have a double-digit touchdown season. It could happen. So I'm interested in it. I love the landing spot. I love the player's a good player. I think a 1-year deal is good for the Bills. They're not super tied to Damian Harris now, but it gives them some flexibility in the running back room. They were looking for that. But it's a big enough name that it prevents them from going out and trading for someone massive. So that's, to me, a good thing for James Cook. And, if you have Damian Harris in Dynasty, you might want to sell him, but you at least got one more very viable year out of him. So that's a bonus.
Once some touchdowns start pouring in, I'm flipping them.
Oh, yeah.
Anything I can get. Yeah. Anything I can get. I won't be bad on Buffalo. Like, you kind of sense the Bills kind of want Josh Allen to not run as much and kind of protect himself more. So you have a bruiser like Damian Harris to do so. I think this kind of will also help Cook sustain the whole year and be a productive player. So I still think he has the headshot on that role with the receiving ability and his ability to run the ball as well. So as we always said, as I always say, like, it's all up to Buffalo. If they want to run the ball and utilize the running backs, it's all up to them. Otherwise, these guys are just going to be productive players and not good in fantasy. But in redraft for Damian Harris, I don't think he'll be another one of those sneaky late round veteran picks that you probably want to pick up too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of in that same kind of conversation as Devin Singletary just mentioned. I mean, I feel like that's going to be another split backfield where I think Damian Harris might have a pretty good season ahead of him, I think, still, personally. Again, the long-term value, who knows if he's going to find another contract after this or how that's going to work. And if he obviously has a bad season, I feel like that could be the end for Harris in terms of his value long-term. But if he has a good season, we've seen the experiment with Zach Moss didn't really go well, a bigger back. So hopefully that can change it with Damian Harris. He's been a pretty good runner over his career. And it seems like the Bills want to get away from Josh Allen running the ball into the end zone as much. They want to give it to a bigger back, allow him to pound it in. And, especially late season in that Buffalo weather, having a guy like Damian Harris could be very beneficial. We saw it in New England plenty of times. I like it in terms of a contending team right now. If I'm a contender, I'm trying to buy low on Damian Harris as much as I can before they start going up. But it also, in the same sense, like you said, Jibs, if he starts doing well and you're not a contender, sell him off and get the value for him then, because I just don't see long-term value from him. But for 23, it looks pretty good. Next on the board, Isaiah McKenzie was released by the Buffalo Bills and now signed a 1-year deal with the Indianapolis Colts. How do you guys feel about McKenzie?
I like him. Good player. I think the Colts need weapons. They just got to kind of reassess what's going on at the quarterback position. So they just need people to throw to. Isaiah McKenzie's that. He's solid. I don't think he's anyone you can really build your team around, your wide receiver core around. I think he's solid. It speaks a lot to Khalil Shakir, in my opinion, that they felt the need to release Isaiah McKenzie. It's like, okay, well, we got this guy to do what you do. So, to me, Isaiah McKenzie, it's interesting. He's on the Colts. That's fine. But this speaks volumes to Khalil Shakir. And I think if you can, now go make a pass at Khalil Shakir and try and add him, it's like he could be the new slot guy in the Bills. And so that's nice. We've seen that role do well. And when, he's out there, he does well with it. So, yeah, back to Isaiah McKenzie, fine. Good trade, good deal, but not, again, I just think that's more like the Colts are like, we just need bodies to make an assessment on quarterback.
Nah, I don't hate it. I still don't think he'll be as useful in either dynasty or redraft due to them still having Pittman. You'll think Alec Pierce will emerge a little bit as a wide receiver too. I believe they still have Doolin or whatever his name is on the roster. So I think those two will be kind of fighting and scrapping over those wide receiver 3 reps. But it's not going to be anything like worth it. Like if a guy can get 500 yards and some touchdowns, I don't think that's going to be pushing the button anything. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think 500 yards and 5 touchdowns is what he will do. Honestly,
I just don't see
him, like what he did last year is what his career highs, and it was like 400 and some yards and like 4 touchdowns. So for McKenzie to step up at 28 years old, he's not a young guy. He's an old guy in this league already. So yeah, again, it's interesting in deep leagues, and that's really about it. I mean, Paris Campbell did well in the slot last year. McKenzie is a slot guy. We'll see, but I do expect like a guy like Alec Pierce, like Jim said, to take a next step at his development. So, all right, over to Ronald Jones. Signed a 1-year deal with the Cowboys. Ronald Jones has not done much since his 2019 season. How do you
Super Bowl champ. What you mean?
2020 season. How do you guys feel about Ronald Jones in Dallas?
Ronald Jones won't make the Cowboys. Period. He's gonna get cut. He's just gonna get cut. So that's how I feel about Ronald Jones.
I like it, simple and easy.
He's just not. He's not. He won't make the team. So I don't care.
Did Jerry say anything about Ronald Jones?
Who knows? Who knows?
If he did, he might make the roster.
Jerry still thinks he has Ezekiel Elliott on the roster.
I did see a report today that Zeke has potential still to come back to Dallas.
Oh, see, they're not over the breakup. Okay, yeah. All right, Ronald Jones.
So it should be a sell high if you have him on your team as much as possible for a 4th-round pick or something. So because he was definitely not worth anything a month ago. So last up on this portion here, Dearness Johnson signed a 1-year deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We obviously know of him having moments in 2021 when both Chubb and Hunt were out, and he performed very well. And now he gets the backup Travis Etienne. How do we feel about Dearness Johnson? Is there any kind of interest in him?
I mean, a little bit. I think it's gonna be Etienne's backfield as much as he can handle. But like we've talked about kind of this whole show is teams are having 2 or 3. They need a whole room. Like they're treating running back now in the past kind of 5, 6, 7 years as if a wide receiver core. Like they were like, we need 3 or 4 guys to be able to do multiple things. Like we can't just have one guy do it all. And so Dearness Johnson is just another rotational piece in that backfield, which is interesting. If this is how it pans out, where it's Etienne 1, Dearness Johnson 2, then I'm super interested. I also think the Jaguars might go draft a guy. They could trade for a guy. They could also do a lot. So, Dearness Johnson right now, good signing, solid piece. But if he slides into the RB3 on that team, then I'm kind of out. I don't really want much to do with it. But if push comes to shove and week 1, he's the, RB2 on the team, yeah, I think there's value there. I think there's certainly value there. The Jaguars they turned it on. T-Law seemed to figure it out towards the end of the last season. They added Calvin Ridley. This offense could turn it around pretty quick.
Yeah, like it's not really pushing the needle for me in redraft, but just like everyone else. But out of like Devil Singletary, Damian Harris, Dearness Johnson probably would be the cheapest out of all of them if you're trying to take just a flyer. Like if you're just going YOLO, here's my last pick in the draft, 5th round, 4th round type of deal. And if you want to take that approach, but I still don't see him being like a usable piece because it's going to be the ETN show, and I don't think he's shown much as a receiver, so he's kind of like relegated to being like that rotational player who's just serving down the 1st and 2nd downs.
Ooh, sorry. Definitely nothing that sparks my interest in redraft unless ETN gets hurt, obviously. But it's definitely good to have in Dynasty as a nice depth piece. I think I had him on a lot of teams, and I was concerned that he just wasn't going to find a home. And I think he ended up in a situation where we didn't really see much of the RB2 in Jacksonville after James Robinson left. But I think that they have to know that they want to have this team go long, having Travis Etienne healthy throughout an entire season and into the playoffs having a guy like Dearness Johnson who's a little bit bigger back who can kind of push the mold a little bit there. And it's interesting. It's definitely someone I want to hang on to. Definitely someone to buy really low on if you can. But I do like the signing for Jacksonville. I like it for Dearness Johnson. So,
but like, I'm totally with you. Here's an interesting one. Like, if I was a dynasty manager and I had, say, like Gus Edwards, I would go knock on the Dearness Johnson manager's door and be like, "Hey, I got Gus Edwards. Let's do a straight swap." Like, you know what I'm saying? Because at least you're giving me some upside in youth. You're giving me a chance. Like, but you could get Dearness Johnson for nothing. You could probably flip Julio Jones at this point. Be like, "Hey, Julio might get another job. Give me Dearness Johnson." It's like, these are the types of guys if you're trying to clean up your roster a little bit. Dearness Johnson is some of those guys that, like, yeah, he might be on the back of your bench, but it's like, yeah, it's better having him on the back of my bench than someone who's some 30-year-old running back who's Rex Burkhead or whoever. You know what I'm saying? like when you do your sort of summer cleanup of your dynasty rosters, like, it's so often I see people just cut. It's like, no. Add that guy and throw in a 3rd-round pick and see if you can add some youth and see what happens. Dearness Johnson to me is that perfect kind of cheap, whatever, clean up my roster, let me just throw him to the back of the bench kind of guy. And who knows, something might happen.
Funny enough, Gus Edwards and Dearness Johnson are both 27 years old.
Are they really? I for some reason thought Gus was like older than that.
I think he probably started younger, so I think he's
got a lot of miles on him.
But Dearness Johnson came in a little bit older. So, all right. So real quick, Austin Hooper, I mean, he's just a backup tight end that maybe might have a shot on this team. I think the Raiders draft someone, but DJ Shark signed it with he didn't sign with the Lions. He signed a 1-year deal with the Carolina Panthers. How do we feel about DJ Shark in Carolina?
Again, the similar argument to the Adam Thielen is you're going to be dealing with a rookie quarterback year one, so that kind of sucks. But to DJ Chark's advantage is he's a little younger, so he can afford to kind of burn a year with a rookie quarterback, learn the system, learn everything, and then hopefully by year 2 he's hitting the ground running. And DJ Chark also is a deep threat guy. He's a big play guy where Adam Thielen kind of never was. So I'm a little more interested in DJ Chark than I even was last year, which is weird. But yeah, I think he's fine. I'd be making low ball dynasty offers out there, see what you can get. I think he's in a good situation to try and make a name for himself. He's not going to be competing with a lot of people for targets. It's just who's chucking him the ball. That's the one thing that sucks.
Yeah, I don't want him in dynasty. He's just like too inconsistent for me. But and it's going to be, like John said, like a 1-2 year window where he's going to have to get it moving. So redraft, I think he'll be an interesting wide receiver who's going to have those blow up weeks if he can do that with a rookie quarterback. But other than that, like, he's just going to be the same old inconsistent DJ Chark that we love. 30 or bust.
Yes, actually, him and Adam Thielen are the exact same age. I'm just kidding.
I would have walked off this podcast. I would have been so pissed.
I think he's like 27 though. He isn't young.
He's not a young guy, but he's young.
Maybe 26. But with Chark, he's on another prove it deal, unfortunately. And he obviously got some work last year, and he actually did decent in 11 games. He missed the first 4 games with an injury, or the second to the 6th game, whatever it is. He has another opportunity to show out and maybe get another decent contract actually. And it's a good situation there. The target share, there's Terrence Marshall, the aging Adam Thielen, Hayden Hurst. Like, there's just not a lot of pass catchers that you can really pretty obviously that it seems like DJ Shark can be the wide receiver 1 for this team pretty easily. And depending on who they get at quarterback, like if they get CJ Stroud, I'd be pretty interested in DJ Shark to actually have some kind of value heading into next year. But I mean, I think it's a good signing, good buy low opportunity if you can on him. So, All right, last 2. We got 2 trades and we're done for the night, guys. All right, obviously this happened about a week and a half ago. The Cowboys received Brandon Cooks for a 5th-round pick in 2023 and a 6th-round pick in 2024. How do we feel about Brandon Cooks on the Cowboys?
So remember when I was talking about roster cleanup for your dynasty team? Texans basically just did that with Brandon Cooks. They were like, "Hey, look, we're not going to use him. He might still have some life in him. We'll give us a couple late picks, and you can have him." And so it makes sense. Like Cowboys are like, "Hey, we need wide receiver depth. We need kind of a speedster. So hopefully Brandon Cooks still has it, and we're super low investment on it. It's a 5th and a future 6th, like whatever." So. Good for Brandon. I like it. I think if he does still have the speed and he does still, again, that's yet to be seen because we didn't see much out of him in the Texans. But if he does still have it and he's always been a good wide receiver, good pro, I think he'll complement, sort of CeeDee Lamb and hopefully a healthier Michael Gallup. I think he'll be a good number 3 in that offense. You don't have Kellen Mond anymore, so, how creative is that offense going to be? That's the one thing that kind of is a sticking point. But if Brandon Cooks is still fast, he'll still get his chances. He'll still be a good boomer bust flex play as the wide receiver 3 for the Cowboys.
I like it for him personally. I still think it gives him a little bit of life in dynasty formats, especially if Gallup can't get it off and running next year. But for redraft, I don't know. He's just shown just the good veteran mentality. Everywhere he's go, he's been productive. So I could see him being the vocal point in the Dallas offense. They don't have Schultz anymore, so they probably could have some guy produce and pick up those targets. So I don't think it's going to be anything crazy, but I don't see Cooks also being a top 10 round player either in redraft league. So he does make an interesting case as a late round target. But we'll also got to see how everything in the camp rolls out, though. But they've been dire need for a good wide receiver too, and I think he could probably exceed Gallup in that my estimation.
Yeah, that's kind of what you're buying into is this baked in upside of Brandon Cooks of what if he beats out Michael Gallup? And it's then you're drafting him in the 13th round, and then all of a sudden it's week 3 and he's playing more snaps than Michael Gallup. You're like, oh, this is great. I got myself a stud wide receiver now. And so I think there is a little bit of that in redraft. There's a little bit of that baked in kind of upside if you take him super late.
He'll probably be a top 10 round pick for sure. I wouldn't doubt it at all that he's in the top 100 picks by the time we get to August. It's just that you look at this team, they lost over 150 targets this coming off season with Zeke, Dalton Schultz, Noah Brown, someone else is on there too. But they lost a lot of targets this offseason here now. And Michael Gallup just can't stay healthy. He continues to miss games every single season. And while they want to run the ball more, they're still going to have to throw the ball enough. And I think 100 targets for Brandon Cooks is not out of the questions, honestly. He didn't look bad last year. He missed games due to injuries. That's not great, but it wasn't some kind of serious injury that's concerning. And I don't see no reason why he can't be a high-end wide receiver 3 most weeks for you in fantasy. And in terms of a contending team right now, is definitely someone I'm willing to buy in for a late second, honestly, right now. Personally, I think that this offense is still good enough that they're going to get him the ball in one-to-one coverage. Over the last few years, he's been the wide receiver 1, having to deal with wide receiver 1 coverage. Doesn't have to do that anymore. You have CeeDee Lamb on the one side of the field. So Brandon Cooks, I like Brandon Cooks a lot. I love this trade for the Cowboys. I like it for Brandon Cooks too.
Yeah. I think and you could, if you are a contender, you could offer up a Romeo Doubs for a Brandon Cooks and probably get that no problem. And it's Aaron Rodgers could be gone. Who knows what's going on with Green Bay, but it's what does Romeo Doubs get you? It's if he gets you Brandon Cooks, it's if you're a contender, I would do that. I'd consider it.
I like that. I like that a lot. All right. And finally, last trade of the night, last fantasy of the night. The Browns received Elijah Moore from the New York Jets, including a 3rd round pick, and they had to give up their 2nd round pick back to the Jets. How do we feel about Elijah Moore in Cleveland now?
Awesome. I love it. It sucks for David Bell. Anyone who was expecting David Bell to all of a sudden become a thing, that became a really insurmountable ask. But I love Elijah Moore. He's a great player. He's awesome. When he touches the ball, he's good. It's like, I don't know why the Jets had this like weird beef with him. It was so stupid. Maybe I don't know the guy personally. I mean, maybe he's got issues on the field, locker room stuff. I don't know. But whatever it is, the Jets just decided to basically give him away to move down 30 picks. It's like, all right, yeah, I'll take a proven talent that we know he's going to be good. It just wasn't great for you, but we know he can be a wide receiver 2 on our team with Amari Cooper. Like, that's a no-brainer. So, again, back to the old conversation we had with Amari Cooper all last season is like, well, what's Deshaun Watson going to look like? What's his play style going to be? Like, is he going to start throwing the ball better? And it's like, if that's the case, then yeah, Elijah Moore is going to be awesome. He's going to be totally awesome. If Deshaun Watson still struggles and they can't seem to get anything going on offense and he's doing 20 pass attempts a game, it's like, well, then yeah, it's probably not going to be great. So I think a lot hinges on Deshaun Watson, but Elijah Moore himself is a great player, and the Browns didn't give up much to get him.
Yeah, I do like it in the NFL perspective. Dynasty, you could take a flyer if you think the Browns will hold on to him long term. Redraft leagues, I don't know if I want the potential wide receiver 3 on the Browns, to be honest. But if their offensive philosophy changes and they happen to be throwing the ball, hey, you never know. But one more thing. Oh, yeah. I'm just praying that the Jets are lucky that Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson are such good buddies, and Bryce Hall, because they burnt flames with Denzel Mims. They burnt flames with Elijah Moore. I don't know what they do to the wide receivers. It's crazy. Yeah,
it is nuts how the Jets front office just can't get out of their own way to like be a successful franchise. It's like, what are you doing? Like, you're just I don't know what's going on. And what's going to happen is they're going to throw a bazillion picks to go get Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers is going to be gone in 2 years, and the Jets are going to be back to the basement for 2 decades. And it's like, all right, you guys are just doing the same shit over and over again.
I like it. I like it. Keep it up.
As the Patriots fan, keep going. Keep going. It's comical.
Keep it up. All right. Yeah. So, yeah, I love this for Elijah Moore. He needs a fresh start somewhere else there. He has an opportunity to be the wide receiver 2 and even the second pass catcher on this team pretty early on. He could play the slot, could play outside. He likely will play the slot more than likely because of the way Donovan Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper both play outside more. And God forbid, in a year from now, they could just part ways with Amari Cooper if they wanted to. He is getting up there in age. He's going to be 29 this season here now. And they could be looking for fresh young wide receivers to take over. And Elijah Moore could absolutely do that. He's a good buy right now. You might have to pay a little bit more than you were going to pay a month ago, but you're buying for that potential upside now. And I don't think it's overly asking price right now for Elijah Moore out there. I think you could give up a second and get Elijah Moore if you wanted. I don't think you have to go out and give up the farm or anything to get him on your team, but definitely a good move for the Browns to get another guy who has a playmaking ability, and good for Elijah Moore to get out of New York and give an opportunity with a pretty good quarterback besides that. So, but that is going to wrap up our tonight's show, guys. We did a lot of fantasy. I think that's a lot of my last slide. So that is my last slide. So yes, we're all done for the night, guys. Thank you guys all for tuning in. As always, we do really much appreciate it. Coach John, anything you want to say before we get going?
Nope. I got nothing.
Coach Gibbs, what about you?
Nope.
Just blasting off now. All right. So guys, thank you all for tuning in. Like I said, once again, please go follow us over on Twitter at Coaches Fantasy. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd appreciate it. Give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you guys listen to your guys' podcast. We'd really appreciate it. As always, if you guys want to join our Discord channel, please just DM us over on Twitter at Coaches Fantasy. Like I said, we have a bunch of trying to build that up a little bit there, trying to get a lot of people in to talk fantasy, a bunch of different things like that. We really appreciate it. And of course, we'll be back next Monday. Starting in April, we are getting into our rookie talk. So Coach Gibbs will be taking over as host. I'll be moving into more of the analyst chair myself. I know Coach Gibbs is thrilled about it. And we'll be doing a little bit of other things, a couple of mock drafts in April as well. We'll try to get you guys ready for your pre-rookie rookie drafts that you may have. I know I'm in one I'm looking forward to this Sunday. And then just in general to get these rookies a little bit more. So thank you guys all for listening. Tune in until next time, guys, and have a good one.